what's going on, y'all? T-Bob here.
And Jake as well.
And you're about to watch a little OTB LSU.
We're going to give you all the latest, greatest between LSU football, baseball, women's basketball, softball, and everything in between.
Bottom line, if you want to talk Tigers, keep it locked, subscribe, like it. Now it's time to get into a little LSU football. Taylor, I'll kind of weave in and out of your takes with the Brian Kelly sound here. Give me your biggest takeaway from being boots on the ground. And guys, Taylor had some pretty takes last year that at the time I kind of made fun of, but ended up being true. So we're going to trust him a little bit here, as much as we can. A little bit. What do you think about Saturday? What's your main thing that stood out?
I thought Nuss had the best day he's had since I was out there.
Okay.
The first 11-on-11 period, we were talking about it. They have a clip of it. It looks like an interception. It was not. He was about 1.5 yards out of bounds. It was a throwaway by Nuss. And then there was a drop by Chris Hilton. Other than that, Nussmeier did not have an incompletion. So An intentional throwaway and a drop pass on a drag route. He looked really good. Then in goal line situation, they are going to use the tight ends a lot. I mean, Nussmeier rolled out. He hit Pimpton in the back of the end zone. We talked about the jump ball that Collins threw to Trades Green. You're going to have 2, maybe even 3 tight ends on the field at the same time. Kelly actually said it in his press conference. That might be the most talented group on the entire team. They are awesome.
We'll get to the tight end answer, but yes, Jake, he does talk about 13 personnel. So be on the lookout for that.
How have you not made a Pimpton ain't easy something?
I'm waiting for him to earn it.
Okay.
You know, I got to see it on Saturday.
All right.
But don't worry. There's plenty of Pimpton puns.
That's what I'm saying.
Right around the corner.
Okay.
You get really alliterative with that, I would say, probably as well. All right.
13 personnel and with this team is very intriguing because you can be so creative.
Yes.
Because I think Pimpton and I think Green can really – they're not receivers, but they can play so close to being a receiver that you roll 13 personnel out there in the defense early in the season before they adjust to it. Well, they run maybe a base personnel out there, and then you look up and you could have Green out wide. You could have Pimpton in the slot and Mason Taylor still as a wide tight end.
Give me a little tight end bunch.
You know what I'm saying? So like you
Put them
do
all
that.
Together.
You've got a Z, you've got an F, and you've got a Y, even though it's all 3 tight ends.
Now, before we get to the tight end answer, though, okay, so here was the deal. DJ Chester's out. There's a stomach bug going through the team. Shout out Emory Jones and the Weeks brothers. They were both referencing, like Kelly was like, I don't know how they're practicing today. They're very sick. They're being disinfected and they're trying to beat it. But DJ Chester is out. Garrett Dellinger slides over to center. Tyreek Adams at guard. So it creates a bit of a different dynamic. And it's a lengthy answer. But listen to Brian Kelly talk about kind of operating during the game and how the growth that you see out of the players, but also out of the coaches. And listen with this in mind, because to me, Jake, it sounds like he's kind of talking to his young offensive coordinators in Joe Sloan and Cortez Hankton maybe a bit here. This is a part of Brian Kelly's opening statement.
It's also how you build your football team's depth. You need to have those sandpaper moments, if you will, for the offense as they kind of, come into their own and build the depth. We know about Emory. We know, what he's going to be able to do. We wanted to see Deli at the center position and gives us more depth and versatility at that position. So we moved some guys around on the offensive line today. If you're looking at it as a fan, you probably said, wow, that didn't look very good today. But if you're looking at it as a coach, you're able to coach off it, teach off it, and help those younger guys prepare and get better. So, and look, as I told our football team, it's a great coaching experience as well for our staff and my staff on the offensive side of the ball. If we ever get into these kinds of situations, you have to play a game knowing that you may have a potential mismatch, and then you have to adjust accordingly. If we have a freshman tackle out there going against an all-SEC performer, we got to help his ass. We got to be able to do something. We can't just call plays as if that doesn't exist. That exists. If we have a potential situation where, we may have a problem blocking a particular guy, we have to have answers for that. if we have a situation where we're having some problems picking up protections, we have to be able to look at it from the sideline and maybe call it from the sideline. So, there's teaching going on all the time, and it's not just, one-sided. There's a lot going on there, and a lot of people are learning on a day-to-day basis, and from my perspective, those are all good times for me relative to, getting where we need to get to, and that is being prepared for USC when we kick it off.
Look, you could see him getting a little fired up, right?
Yeah.
We got to help his ass. Like, what are we doing? That felt a bit like, to me, as much as the players out there learning what it's like to maybe be mismatched, because they had like Weston Davis going against like Braden Swinson and stuff. Also basically saying, hey, Coach Sloan, look, you're still a young coordinator. Kelly's been, running an offense for 6 decades. And no, that's maybe a little too much. And
wow, you put some years on our guy.
And basically said, look, man, you got to be cognizant of that fact. You can't just call the offense you want to call. You have to call the offense that the situation allows you to.
Yeah, you absolutely do. And it's, if you're down a receiver and you've got play calls in for your top guy and he goes down and everybody shifts, one spot up, you have to know that play call that you've normally called for the number 2, well, now that's the number 3. The number 3 might not have the same skill set as the number 2. Yeah, I mean, it's not just the offensive line. It's really at every single position. So that's a part of what you have to do, like in the SEC, because things are going to happen. Somebody will go down at some point, and you have to adjust to it until that player shows you that they've caught up enough.
And speaking of going down and somebody stepping up, it looks like we know potentially who at least they're positioning as next man up at the offensive line here at the beginning, and it's Tyreek Adams. And I think this will be at guard or at tackle, right? Because Dellinger's the one that can slide over to center if you need, and that's who moved in. Tyreek Adams, of course, 6'7", 313, redshirted last year. He's from St. Aug, big-time 4-star recruit out of high school. Here's what Coach Kelly had to say on Tyreek.
I thought he did some good things. We're bouncing him around. He's playing, he's playing tackle and guard, and so, I think, we like his athleticism. We like him right now in a I think a developmental role where, I think he's probably the next guy. He's still got a ways to go for consistency, but he's going to flash. We just got to get that to be more consistent.
So I love hearing that he's going to flash, right? So obviously he's had some really big moments. Just needs to, which of course he's a redshirt freshman, but just needs to maybe try to make it more often than not. I thought Kelly, again, to keep in with like the kind of football manager sort of feel that he had in his press conference Saturday. I really enjoy this answer on Garrett Nussmeier. This can be Kelly 5 here, Alondra.
Yeah, I thought he did some pretty good things. I mean, there were a couple things in pressures that, he thinks he's got 52 timeouts. He takes timeouts when he wants to take a timeout. I think he's got to work through a couple of things out there where, decision-making relative to some pressure looks that I want him to get better at. But I thought his process was really good today. He stayed within himself. He looked under control in the situations that we created for him today. And I think when he does that and his drop is in rhythm, he's really good. So I thought we saw a good version of him. I think there's a better version of him out there.
So there you go. Kelly continuing to hold Nuss to a high standard because he knows how good he can be. I just like hearing about, because Garrett Nussmeier, we know he has all the flash and the mentality to be courageous and take chances. So I like hearing kind of rooting him in process and rhythm and then letting the flash kind of happen around the edges a bit.
Yeah, you still have to push a Garrett Nussmeier to do all the little things because, it's something he still hasn't had to do. He's played a lot. He's been here a long time, and he's your guy. But you still have to make sure the little nuances, like he thinks he has 52 timeouts. You have to, make sure that he knows you don't have 52 timeouts, and the clock management and the play clock and getting everybody lined up because, again, yes, he's been here a long time, played a lot. We're expecting a lot. But this will be the first time that it's his team, and he's going to be in all those situations. And so for this coaching staff, they have to make sure that they stay on top of him and don't just assume and hand wave it that he's got it because he's been here so long.
Look at last one here before we go to break. This is an answer on Jacobi and Guillory, and it's about as frank of an answer as you will find. And I think it really speaks to, along with an ever-growing mountain of evidence. Like, Jake, you mentioned how good Omar Speights was in the you mentioned how good Omar Speights was in the preseason, right? We get these pieces of evidence that, like, how these guys were coached the last couple of years just was doing nobody any favors. Here's what Kelly had to say about Jacobi and Guillory's growth.
Well, he wasn't a very good football player when we got here. He was, technically, I would say out of control. He did not play with the kind of discipline necessary to play the position at a high level. And consequently, he didn't play a whole lot of football. I think his maturity and I think his understanding that he needed to be very good at his technique and leverage. And I think last year he figured that out. And because he's so strong and explosive and can play with great leverage, he's now taken those strengths of his and put himself in a position to be an outstanding football player and can play at the next level because of it. So with great strength and lower body strength and great technique, he's now put himself in a position to be a guy that we count on. I think at the same time, there's been parallel tracks with him off the field in that we just talked about him being a graduate. I think his emotional maturity has allowed a lot of this to happen as well. When I first got here, he was not in control of his emotions. There would be times where he just would go off the deep end in terms of not being able to control himself. And he has handled himself very well emotionally. And because of that, I think we've seen this player ascend the way he has.
So it seems like Guillory, the process paying dividends in more ways than one. Pretty interesting to just hear him be like, frankly, just wasn't a good football player when we got here. And that was both physically, technique-wise, and obviously in the emotional spectrum. A lot of growth taking place in both. And here's to hoping this can become that kind of breakout year for him.
He could be the most important player you have outside of your quarterback.
Yeah.
Like, he truly could. I know that sounds crazy coming at a defensive tackle position, but when you look at this team, when you look at where they're deficient as far as depth, when you look just in the totality of the roster, he might be the second most important player to stay healthy on this football team because he is going to have to be impactful. If LSU wants to do anything they want to do, it's going to be because Guillory, in the middle of your defense, is somebody that plays 90% of the snaps.
Wow, Jake, what incredible takes.
I mean, those guys, they're just the best.
I think so. And if you think so, again, hit the like button, subscribe, ring the bell so you get notifications when we post every single day here on OTB LSU.